Cool. All right, I'm hitting the buttons, and in a few seconds, we should be up.
Okay, I see ya.
Cool. Yeah, I'm just waiting. I got a laptop here I'm going to be monitoring on, so making sure that's all good. Cool. I think we're all set up. So yeah, I've hit a recording, so I'm recording locally. Twitch will get it too. But yeah, welcome, Matt. It's great to see you. Hello, Fuel Snabble. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. But yeah, what we're doing today is just reading through last week's F Sharp Weekly. It came out on the 28th of May. It's the F Sharp Weekly 22 of 2022. Um, and we're just going to be going through it. So whatever you're interested in, click on. Whatever you're not interested in, don't click on. And we'll go as shallow or as deep as relevant to us. For those who aren't familiar, this is Sergey Tikhon's blog. He's a F Sharp developer currently in Poland. I think he's in Gdansk. Um, like a cat just visited me. Um,
Oh, nice. This
very,
just got a
very,
hundred
very
times
important
better.
part of the stream. Yeah, this is Oreo.
Critical.
Um, anyway, so yeah, he's been hosting F Sharp Weekly for years, and he also hosts the F Sharp Advent Calendar, which is uh like a December time um yearly thing where he just kind of promotes or encourages everyone to create some content, especially blog posts around that time. Anyway, so every week he releases this, and it's basically he collects the links from the F Sharp world. He puts them in a nice little format to read on a weekly basis. Anyway, my name is Stashu. I'm here in Philadelphia. I've been working on F Sharp for a while, and with me is Matt. Hi, Matt.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm out of Portland, Oregon, and been doing F Sharp since version 2. So I'm kind of lost track of when that is. But yeah, I think like 10 years or so now.
Yeah.
Not well, mind you, not well.
Nice. Cool. So, we got a bunch of links here. So I think the first deal is just click through. We'll talk through, which things do and don't interest us. For example, I'm on Mac and not Mac and Windows. I'm on Linux and Windows, so all the Mac links I won't particularly care about. If you want to dive into them, we can. But generally speaking, I'm gonna go through. My plan is to go through things that only the things I would organically click on if I were just kind of reading through this myself. Um, so we have resources for F-Sharp onboarding. I saw that this was Natalie Perret. I think she's in France somewhere. She collected this, so that'd be nice to look through. Visual Studio for Mac is now available. Again, I don't have particular interest there, so I'll skip that. Matt, do you have Mac interests?
Not really, but what's interesting, and we'll probably get to this later, but so
Yeah,
I've been doing this here in topological sort, and I had my 10 versions, like this is how fast I could go. And I've been exchanging messages with people who have been kind of trying to improve on version 10. And what's interesting is seeing the performance difference between an Intel machine, an AMD, and an M1 Mac.
yeah,
Holy smokes, the M1 Mac is fast. So I'm not interested yet, but that performance was very impressive. So maybe in the future, but it's nice to say that an M1 Mac is a scorching fast .NET machine. So it's going to be really exciting to see how that develops in the future.
yeah, yeah. It sounds great. Cool. So anyway, I'll skip over that. We have this Visual Studio Microsoft Build 2022. So usually at the top of the page there'll be like things that are general .NET and then a little bit of like meta level F sharp stuff. For anyone who hasn't done this, so a lot of these things at the top will be like Visual Studio blog. So I think that'll be worth checking out. .NET MAUI probably will be worth checking out. I'm not super well familiar there. As far as I know, it's the new desktop thing. That's like the short version I know of.
Yeah. So this is this is interesting. It is interesting to me. It's some people are saying it's the new Silverlight in terms of like, hey, it's like Microsoft's next attempt at getting things to run everywhere. Uh, I think it's a stronger attempt than that. And I think that there's more promise there. For me, I'm kind of like, I once Microsoft goes like starts building their stuff with the technology, that's when I'm like, okay, it's here to stay. Like the moment they actually make like a product with it, it's like, okay, then it's definitely going to be supported. There's some pretty sweet demos about what it can do, and I've watched those, and it's like, yeah, it's exciting. I think it'll be cool. Okay, Microsoft, when are you going to dog food it? When are you going to use it yourself in one of your products? And it's at that point like, okay, yeah, that's going to stick.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like I've heard the promise of unified desktop experience for years. I mean, I remember in the days of what was that XAML thing on Windows 8? Anyway, so
I mean, I had a Windows phone, man.
yeah,
I remember the
same.
talks. They were like, it's going to be the same everywhere. I'm like, we're still fighting for that dream.
Yeah.
It's a lovely
Anyway,
dream.
yeah. Anyway, I'm happy to click into that. I'm curious to see, what .NET Maui's at this point. I have hopes
Mm,
that it's going to be more unified, but I've had hopes before. Um,
yeah.
all right, there's this thing about port tunneling in Visual Studio for ASP.NET Core projects. Um, that sounds a little bit interesting. I'm not using Visual Studio. I mean, I'm doing pretty much all my development on Linux these days, so I'll probably want to take a quick peek at that,
Yeah.
but not particularly interesting to me. And Matt, if I'm not wrong, you're not necessarily working on web stuff. You're more on like computational stuff, right?
Yeah. No, I'm that odd bird who doesn't who's scared of web anything. But I can say I have done some websites in Fable that are in production. So it even even old backend dudes like me can do web.
Yeah, cool. Um, there's this HTML for F Sharp Lit. I saw this as a small um, extension in Visual Studio there. I'm curious to check out
Mhm.
what that is. Um, I am happy to have Microsoft Teams out of my life. So I'm uninterested in the toolkit. So I'm not sure if you're on Teams much these days, if this is relevant to you, but personally, yeah, I'll skip
I
that one myself.
yeah, yeah. There's an old saying, if you can't be polite, be vague. If you can't say something nice, be vague. Sorry, that's the saying.
Yeah.
I would be very vague in that discussion.
All right. I'll skip over that. Um, I I I have some vague familiarity with Microsoft Graph. As far as I know, it's like the Azure thing that connects. Like if your company's sold on Microsoft stuff, um,
Mhm.
like Microsoft Graph is some way of kind of getting that data in a graph format and maybe exploring it. I don't know much there. I might take a quick peek there. I'm not sure if you have any familiarity.
I've never worked with it.
Cool. All right, this link is a dupe of one we've already opened. Sometimes he embeds tweets to different links. This link is very important here. This fast F sharp topological sort part one. This is Matt's.
Eh.
You can speak to that. So what is topological sort? So this is like a multi-minute video, so it's probably not a thing to watch as part of this because it's like half an hour.
No.
But if you could
Yeah.
like briefly talk about what it is and what's the audience for anyone who maybe wants to watch after this.
Yeah. The target audience is people new to intermediate F sharp devs. And the idea is that I've been focusing a lot on performance. And the idea is to kind of mentor, pair, teach people how to approach performance in F sharp, starting. And the way to do that is very like hands on, where take an algorithm and then just continually improve it through profiling and benchmarking. Topological sort just happens to be an algorithm that I'm really familiar with through the work that I do.
Hmm.
So that was a natural one for me just to explain and to kind of walk through the improvement. It's actually a really useful algorithm in terms of topological sort is like a really highfalutin term for finding the sequence to do things so that the dependencies have been taken care of ahead of time. So if you think about like a Gantt chart, right? And how like, hey, I need to do A, and then A leads to B, then B leads to C. But then before you do C, you also need to do D. So like there's that interdependency. A topological sort is just an ordering of items so that you've always visited the parent first. So it comes up a lot in like project scheduling, but also like task scheduling on the CPU. And if you actually like think about how CPUs or like query engines work, this like what work do I need to do before this so that I can always do the next item? So it's like this problem is actually pervasive.
Yeah, I have a question actually. So I have not watched these videos yet, but I have a I mean, I could be totally off base. I'm curious if the following is a use case. So, one of my hobbies is speedrunning, specifically the game Super Mario 64. And
Oh,
there's
nice.
like a dependency graph between
Yep.
different things that you need to do. For example, you need to get this key before you enter this door. You need to get X
Mm-hmm.
number of stars before you go into this place. Um,
Mm-hmm.
is that problem kind of like this? Because I've always thought like I want to solve this problem, right? I have like this big graph computation of like
Mm-hmm.
dependencies and achievements you can make and all that kind of thing, and I want to optimize for like what's the theoretical best possible time and the way to compute that. Um, is that relevant?
Kind of. So it would give you valid orderings of that. And this algorithm in particular tells you if you actually have like a cycle in there. So it's like not possible. Because so like the idea of like, hey, A depends on B, B depends on C, but C depends on A, like that's a cycle, right?
Sure.
And so this algorithm tells you whether there are cycles in your graph or not, is one of the additional valuable things that comes out of it. But yeah, the idea of like, hey, what are the different orders that I could do like a speed run in could be an example. Now you're actually kind of starting to like delve into like an optimization problem, which has some different techniques for solving that. And if you wanted to chat that sometime, I'd be happy to explain the different
Cool.
because that's
It
actually
that'd be a longer
yeah.
conversation, I guess.
Yeah,
Cool.
that'd be a long conversation, but like you get into an optimization, you're talking to an optimization nerd about an optimization problem. So that's not what we're here for.
Cool. All right, let's table that, shelf that for another day. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
All right, next link here on .NET Live, building low latency distributed systems with Akka.NET. This is probably another thing where it's going to be like a longer, yeah, it's an hour long video. Um, so I'm not gonna to really click into that. Um, Similarly, this .NET MAUI video, I mean, I think the .NET MAUI post will be enough for this discussion, and for my curiosity, I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to spend whatever time this is to learn that. This is something that I do care about, but will probably be long. I've been working a lot recently on compiling what's it called? Compiling down Dart, which is the company I work at, into WebAssembly via Blazor, and
Yeah.
we've hit some interesting edge cases recently of that world. It's kind of like bleeding edge. But anyway, I'm curious what is involved here, but it might be a little bit long for this thing, but really exciting world there, the world of .NET compiling down to WASM.
Pretty much
Um,
any talk by Steve Sanderson is almost always a must watch because
yeah,
you're always going to have their socks blown off because he's like, and then I did this crazy thing on a like a pie machine or something. I was like, how's that even possible? So
yeah,
he's also just a good speaker. So there's
yeah.
always a watch for me, even if I'm not necessarily interested in the technology. It's always interesting to see what really smart people are thinking about.
Yeah, this is my favorite recent Steve Sanderson project. It's .NET WAS SDK. So normally when you load Blazor stuff, your browser downloads a bunch of DLLs that have been compiled and the like .NET.wasm, and then it loads it. You know, you have to download all these different files. The aim of that project is just compile everything down into one WASM file and just download
Mm-hmm.
that and load it. Um, anyway, that's been an interesting project. The only thing, anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on WebAssembly. I know it's been on my mind. Anyway, so skipping ahead. So comparing a voxel game in F Sharp and Rust, that sounds interesting. I saw some good press on Twitter
It
around
is.
that.
It is
Um,
interesting. There's some good fodder there.
nice. Exploring F Sharp front end landscape, I saw some good press around that. Curious to see, I'm a few years behind on um, I'm a few years behind on the F sharp front end world, so I'm happy to look at that. World Domination Part One, no idea what that's about, but always a great blogger. Um,
Phantom OS.
yeah, oh, it's Phantomos. Okay. Oh,
Mm.
okay, cool.
Phantomos. Sorry.
Yeah, I thought it was Phantomos. I could be wrong. F sharp data literal providers. I haven't seen type provider in discussion for a while, so I'll be happy to click into that.
It's a cool
Um,
one.
cool. You've already read all these. You're spoiling them.
Oh, I
Um,
wanted to be like informed, so I
sure.
didn't know what I'm actually talking about.
Yeah, you could. That's good. I skimmed briefly, but I figured most of the time we can be chatting. Using iServer time with F sharp. Don't know what that is. But I'll click it open. F sharp v next stuff. So these are different pull requests and issues around future F sharp stuff. I think that'll be those will probably all be worth a quick peek. Um, F sharp data adaptive, on demand adaptive incremental data for F sharp. Curious what that is. F sharp minimal API. Uh, I my impression so far is that like we already had minimal APIs for creating like web endpoints and all that. So like I don't know, maybe that's an ignorant take, but I haven't that the initial press hasn't so excited me,
Mhm.
but I'm curious to see what the deal is here. And I know you don't do too much web stuff, so that might be as interesting to you.
Yeah.
Another WASM thing, WASM application, F sharp. Probably won't spend a ton of time on that, but I'll take a quick peek. Fable lit full stack template. Uh, I've seen this term Fable lit around recently. I think this is like an alternative binding to the Fable React stuff, which like normally is what you bind to when you're in um, when you're doing Fable front end stuff. So anyway, I'm curious to check out that. In fact, I might personally say ignore this link and just check out what Fable lit is. So we both learn what that is, unless you know. We have SIMD array, which is I don't know what that is, but I know that you definitely know what that is. So we'll definitely spend some good time on
I,
that.
yeah, I can speak to that.
Yeah, for sure. Trella, a project around text template modeling, type provider written in F sharp. Um, when I see text template modeling, I think of the old T4 templates, which are like code generation
Oof.
stuff in
Oh
in
yeah.
in .NET. Have not followed meta programming in a while, so I'm curious what this is and if that's in the same space. I think it is. Um, I remember last time we actually had a good chat with one of the chatters around T4. It might have been Fuel here, um, or Fule, not sure. Probably not. All right, we have some new releases. We have Fleece. We have F Sharp data literal providers. This seems, I think this is a duplicate of something we already had. Maybe I'm wrong there. Yeah, I think I'm wrong. So I'll open that up and then Fable 3.7. All right, this is a duplicate link. We already have this open. And that's it. So I'll keep this tab open here, but we have a good stack of tabs up top, and so what I'll typically do, Matt, when I'm doing this is
Mhm.
like I have like 20 tabs open right now. My brain wants to close a few tabs, so I'll like
Yep.
spend like 30 seconds to a minute on each of the tabs, just doing a quick peek and seeing, is this something that's going to take a while to read through, and is this like closable within a minute or two, right? Can we like
Hmm.
just kind of digest
Hmm.
this pretty quickly? So if you don't mind,
Cool.
I think I'll proceed that way.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, this will take a little bit to read. I've read some really cool things around this, and uh, now we have scope for how long this is going to take. We have a visual length here. But I think the short version is that they wrote some voxel game both in F sharp
Yep.
and in Rust, and that we want to see they're comparing specifically the performance. I'm curious if they compare like the length or code complexity or build tools or packages available and that kind of stuff for game dev. So really curious about that. Um, yeah, so we'll dive in. Similarly, this will take a while to read through. Exploring the F sharp front end landscape. Cool. They even have some WebAssembly stuff going on here. This is a long post. We might not even be able to get through with all this, but we'll try. We'll try to at least highlight as much as we can. For what it's worth, I'd like to cap this to like 2 hours total,
Mhm.
as to not exhaust ourselves. Uh, cool. World Domination Part One. Interesting style blog. I think they've updated their theme recently. Very like console. It feels very like a it reminds me of an old uh like console like this kind of thing. Um, anyway, there's a fair amount here, so not something that can be uh done too quickly. But yeah, this does look like the next major version of Phantomos, which I use. And if you're not familiar in the audience, this is it's a tool that's used to format your F sharp code in a pretty nice way. So I'm curious what the refactoring efforts was and what's so nice about V4 besides the speed. Personally, I haven't felt any poor performance in Phantomos.
Mhm.
So
Well, I know that it's starting to be used in F sharp core.
mm,
And so I'm guessing that code base, that's a pretty large code base.
yeah,
So I think performance is going to matter a whole lot more when you're dealing with a project of that size. So I think that is part of why this is exciting for a lot of people.
yeah, I have seen at least Don have a few PRs out where he formats the F sharp code base, F sharp core.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so that's where he's speaking to. So for anyone curious of what the style looks like of Phantomos, once it's been formatted, you can go check out recent pull requests in the F sharp code base. Anyway, so we'll look into that. F sharp data literal providers. This seems like a shorter thread. I'll pull this towards the front of the stack here. Um, I'll keep on going there. Using iServer timing with F sharp. Um, don't know what this is. Nope. Cool. But this also looks like a pretty short thing to get through, so I'll just move the short things towards the front. We have some. The next few things are F sharp pull requests and feature requests. Um, this is
This one
something
is
that you really
beautiful.
care about. If you want, yeah, we can stick on this for a minute, and you can talk about this.
Yeah. So this is so fundamental to F sharp. So why do we care about this so much? So
Well, what is this?
compares. Okay. So yeah, great question. So inside of F sharp core, there is code for doing comparison on primitives. So
Primitives being like yeah, ints and bulls and whatnot.
ints, int 32, like yeah, ints, like all those different primitives, right? And the default comparison as it exists today uses branching code. Now, that's fine, but you can go much. That's fine if your CPU can predict the branch correctly.
What's branching code?
Okay. So, like, if then else, right?
So
Like,
like
hey, evaluate some condition. And if it is, continue. If not, jump to somewhere else. That's a branch in your code.
okay,
And
and like are they saying if it's this type and this type, then do this compare, or is it like
no, it's like if this is less than that, or if this is greater than
okay,
that,
okay,
that type of comparison. And this is really fundamental because like the F sharp set and the F sharp map collections are both tree data structures. And so whenever you're doing like inserts or finds or anything, you're doing a ton of comparisons, right? Also, just in your code, when you write these if then else statements where you're comparing two different values, those are all comparisons as well. The default behavior in F sharp when it is comparing these primitives, it uses branching code. And your CPU, when it sees a branch, it will try to speculate, saying, like, oh, well, 9 times out of 10, this condition is true. So I'm going to go ahead and start executing the true branch. But if I end up being wrong, I then have to reset my place and go back. It's very branching code can be horrendous for performance on a CPU if it can't predict correctly.
Hmm.
And there's a different style, which is branchless code, which is like, hey, I am going to write code such that it never branches. And you think like, how the heck can you do that? So like, how the heck can you do that? You can. And this pull request is an excellent example of how to do that. And there is massive speed up for your code for your comparison. You can see it here. Like there's a 3x speed up
Yeah.
when it's very difficult for it to predict. If you're using branching code and the branch predictor can't figure it out, it's slow. But if you use branchless, it's 3 times faster because it doesn't need to do that prediction anymore. So it's never going to be wrong. So this is like so deep down into the F sharp guts that most people won't like notice or care. But what will happen is like, hey, the next version of F sharp comes out and everything just gets faster. And it's like, hey, what did they do to make things faster? This kind of stuff is what they do to make things go faster. And this developer, Jeremy, is a freaking genius. And he's super, super responsive, very helpful. I have asked him so many questions, very generous developer. So anything that he does, I pay close attention to. So if you're someone who cares about performance, looking at this pull request and seeing what he does is really valuable stuff.
Yeah. Cool. I appreciate all that context. So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna. I think I have a naive understanding of this. So when I'm imagining these branchless comparisons, the branches is this I see if this is less than that, and I'm
Mhm.
seeing here that he's having when this he's basically instead of evaluating truthiness like true or false,
Mhm.
he's getting 0, 1, or -1, right? So is the idea that you
Mhm.
multiply these like 0, -1 things when you want to do like nested comparisons, or is that totally am I extrapolating
Yeah,
too
that
far?
no, you're hitting on the ideas. The idea with branchless code is instead of using like an if then or else, like just do some math and the result of that will give you the correct answer. And when you comparisons in .NET, when you compare, it's the idea like does it return -1, 0, or 1?
Yeah.
That's how it works. So like if you like ever implemented like an I comparable or something like an I comparer, um, that's what that function is doing, that method is doing. Like, hey, you give me an A, you give me a B, and I'm going to return you -1 if A is less than B. I'm going to return 0 if A is equal to B, and I'm going to return a 1 if A is greater than B. So that's what like the 1, -1, and 0 correspond to. And this is doing that, but without branches.
Cool. All right, that's great context. So for anyone who's interested in reading through, it's only plus 30,000 minus 8,000 lines.
That's
So
mostly tests, by the way. It's mostly tests.
I'm sure it is. I'm just messing. Uh,
Yeah.
but cool. That's great context. I'll close that out. All right. So the next open pull request um, for F Sharp here is a work in progress one around reflection free code gen. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm curious. I'm curious what are the many cases of code gen these days. I mean, I had somewhere I was doing like metaprogramming kind of stuff where
Mm-hmm.
I was personally generating my own code, but I'm curious like why the F sharp repository needs it, um, or what it's used for. Uh, so I guess yeah, this might take a little bit to read through, so I'll put it like here-ish. Um, All right, another one, computation. Oh, this is a suggestion here. Computation expressions in function declaration. All right, this is one that also might take a few minutes, just to see if we can close any of these other tabs. All right, a project here around F Sharp Data Adaptive, minimal API thing. We'll spend some time around that. All right, looks like none of these are um, really quick kills. Uh, Yeah, I'm gonna actually replace this tab with just finding out what fable.lit is. Um, SIMD array, that's something that you'll be able to speak to a lot. Uh, but we'll get there. In fact, we might just, hmm. Yeah, I'll leave it there for now. We have Fleece. I forget what Fleece is, but there's a new release there. F Sharp data, literal providers. I swear I just saw that. F Sharp data. No, I'm confusing with adaptive. Um, there's a new version of Fable. I'm not sure if there's anything huge there. There's this. This is actually a good thing to start out with here. Um, once we go through those, Microsoft's their Visual Studio at Microsoft Build. All right, let's see what major things are here. I'll just go through the headlines. So .NET MAUI, we have another link open for .NET MAUI, so I'm not going to bother looking at this. Microsoft DevBox. I saw this. I think this was a teaser for like a what are those Mac machines that have been around for ages? Those little Mac boxes. You know what I'm talking about? Like the Mac Minis or what are they called?
Hmm.
This
Yep.
this looks like a Microsoft version of that. But it was like very teasery, no real information yet, as far as I knew. I mean, it looked very pretty. The physical box. Um,
Yeah, I think it's isn't it just a Qualcomm chip in it though, or is it? Am I talking about something else? Oh no, this is something else. Sorry, my bad.
but maybe I'm wrong too. Uh, oh, I could be totally wrong. I might be thinking of something totally different. Uh, let's see. No, this is not what I was thinking of. I think that this is
No.
like yeah, I think this is like VMs or like preset dev environments or something like that. I
Yeah.
don't know if it's in the same space as like VMs or if it's in the same space as code spaces or something else. Um, but it looks like some Microsoft branded yeah, it looks like VMs in the cloud for Visual Studio development. So like kind of like code spaces in that space. uh,
Hmm.
which is neat. Not something I care a lot about at this point, so I'll skip over it. But for those interested, check that out. Are you on Azure, or what do you do much cloud stuff?
I don't do much cloud stuff, but when I do deploy, it's to Azure.
Okay. I'm on GCP at this point, or GCP and a little
Hmm.
bit of AWS, so no Azure
Hmm.
right now. So I'll probably skip over this unless you want to talk about deployment environments. Although you don't do web stuff, so I think most of this is probably web stuff that you won't care about. Um, ARMS 64 Visual Studio, I don't care. Um, so I'll just close this tab. Nothing too interesting there. .NET MAUI, that might take a few minutes. Port tunneling in Visual Studio for ASP.NET Core projects. I am curious why I'd want that. I guess you want to. Huh.
I don't do anything with that.
Yeah, actually, I'll close this. I don't really care. Um, but yeah, I think the idea is if you want to remotely connect to some other machine, maybe there's like a database or something that you need to communicate with. You can do some port forwarding there. Um, cool. All right, this is one that I thought we could probably kill pretty quickly, just because it's a small thing. If you're in Visual Studio and you're using Fable Lit, I think this is a way where if you're using like HTML templates, and again, I my understanding of this is very thin. Um, it provides nice highlighting so that you can not have to work in an unhighlighted environment. I know working in Visual Studio a while ago, I think probably with like Angular back in the day, it was frustrating to not have proper syntax highlighting and whatnot. So I think this is
Hmm.
probably something towards that for that group, which is great. Microsoft Graphic Build. Um, maybe I don't care. I don't think I care about this either. Do you? Microsoft Graph stuff?
Uh, Not really. It's um, I'm gonna be vague. It's a thing. It's a thing.
Cool.
I don't want Microsoft to come down on me, so I'm gonna just Keep it quiet.
Yeah. Well, I think I don't care is a reasonable vague thing, right? I'm not
Yeah,
saying this
cool.
sucks or anything. It's just
Yeah.
I don't care. Like there's so
Well,
many technologies out in the world to like if I get Java news, I just don't care. It's just like there's so many things in my space that I'm already ignorant of. I don't
yeah,
want to, have to think about things outside of my bubble too much.
yeah.
Um,
I do have more thoughts on it, but I'm not well enough informed to voice a strong opinion to the world. So I'm gonna keep my
yeah.
mouth shut for now, because it might
Okay.
be different from what I know from what I experienced earlier on.
I am reading between the lines. Uh, um, cool. So we've gone through. I think we've thinned out a few little tabs here. I think this is a good place to start here. So this is I guess a collection by Natalie Perret or Perret. I'm not sure. In France, who's a developer there. Been working with F Sharp for a little bit.
Mhm.
Actually, I actually don't know how long. And I guess she's collected a few links here around um, just getting into F Sharp. Uh,
Yeah,
so yeah, the official F Sharp docs, that's a good place. F Sharp for Fun and Profit's always good. Um, I have seen this person's YouTube playlist. They had a fair amount of good F Sharp content. I think he has since stepped away from creating F Sharp content. Um,
yeah. He's doing blockchain now,
right.
blockchain development. But yeah, his the F sharp stuff that he does have is really good. So
Yeah.
I highly recommend it. He also has one of the best videos on computation expressions that
Hmm.
I've come across. It's just like it was super, just I don't know what it is. Like just something about the way he explained it was the first time it really started to click in my mind, which is why I think it's important to have lots of creators in the F sharp space, even if you're producing duplicate content where you're covering the same subject. It it's the idea of like different teachers for different students, right? Because some people could say like, oh man, that teacher for that subject was fantastic for me. Like, oh no, I hated that teacher. And sometimes like just people have like a different vibe, a different energy, and sometimes you connect with it, sometimes you don't. So that's why if you're if you're someone come across this video, like my encouragement is like if you're thinking about writing stuff like, oh, I don't have anything new to say, like that's fine. That's fine because maybe the way you communicate is really going to resonate with other developers. Whereas, you know, Scott Voloshin like wasn't the thing for them because like
I can't
for
imagine that.
no, well, so Scott is fantastic. Love the
Yeah.
guy. Um, he's like F sharp Santa Claus to me, in my opinion. But he like some of the stuff he reads, just like, man, I'm just like, I'm not following exactly what you're doing. And that's me.
Hmm.
That problem is me. And so, like, for example, like his stuff on computation express Scott's stuff on computation expressions, I had a hard time following. Ben's stuff, his video, like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So like
Yeah, yeah.
nothing wrong, like it's all good. I love it.
I I had the same experience. Yeah, I mean it's been a while since I've watched this video, but I remember I watched this one point and I got it. I got it a lot more than I've gotten it before. It's still not
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
fully, um, but yeah, this has all been great. I've had an intention of following up with the rest of these. So thank you. I'm gonna keep that tab open. Thank you, Natalie. I'll keep that tab open for myself. Maybe I'll revisit these. All right, what else do we have here? GitHub Gist Effective F Sharp by Scott. Um, all right, these are just like overall tips. Cool. Uh, Domain Modeling Made Functional. Great book by Scott. I
So good.
believe, yeah, very good. Always, if you're watching this stream or video, get this book.
Yeah,
Um,
that's like the second book I have people read. Like I like get like Kit Easton's book or some other like intro to F sharp, learn the syntax, and then like this is like the next book you should read.
yeah. Um, oh yeah, the Active Pattern Talk by Paul. I love that. That's great. The property taste based testing talk by Scott is fantastic. That's like if you're like fuzz testing and you want to like generate a bunch of values
Oh, it's so good.
and whatnot. Um, Thoughts and Ramblings about F Sharp by Paul. I haven't seen that. I won't add that
I
to our
haven't seen
list of
that
day.
either.
I won't. Yeah, I won't unless we have a lot of time at the end. I won't dive into that as part of this, but I'm curious about that because
Or is
I
it just his blog?
Yeah, it's just his blog, but I'm curious, what are his thoughts? Oh, it's just the homepage of his blog. I see.
Yeah.
I thought it was like a particular like here are my ramblings. Um,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, in like a big post thing, which I was looking forward to a long rant by him. Um,
Yeah. The nice and part of the thing, like they'll say it, like, well, one of the things I really like about Paul and his stuff, and I've never actually met him, but we've communicated on Twitter and stuff, is that he always has just like a different eye, a different take, a different viewpoint than a lot of people. And he's also able to articulate it. So he's not, he doesn't like, so anytime I disagree with him, I was like, okay, I'm about to learn something because like he probably has a really good reason for why he's thinking what he's thinking. I just might not understand it yet. So definitely an interesting person to absorb content from.
yeah. All right, so section here on functional programming, um, a course of functional programming in F sharp. That's interesting. Uh, I haven't seen much. This I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but based on this cryptic title, I'm kind of guessing academia. Yep, it
Yeah, I
looks
don't know.
kind of
I've never
academic to
heard of
me.
it. I might
So
check it out.
yeah, it's a lecture series given at
Whoa.
University of Tromsø, Norway. I might be pronouncing that wrong. So that's actually really interesting. An introductory course in F sharp or in functional programming in F sharp at the same time. I probably won't look into that too much though. F sharp plus. This is something I've actually been meaning to look into for a while. I think that this is like a bunch of little extensions in to F sharp, like types and functions and whatnot, where you kind of wish they were baked into F sharp, but they're not. Um, so I'm gonna actually look up this myself. So there's a NuGet package, excuse me, called F
Yeah,
sharp plus. I think this video is covering that.
yeah, it
Uh,
is. It is. If you're someone who digs Haskell,
okay.
this is for you. This is your jam.
So it adds the functional stuff. It's focused on
Oh
that.
yeah, it is definitely like the hardcore functional stuff. And so that's why I say, like, if you're an F sharp dev who really loves Haskell or Idris or some of those other really hardcore functional programming stuff, you'll want to check this out.
Okay, cool. That might not be my jam, but I'll at least take a peek again. Which I think I've probably always looked a little bit, and then I found out I'm not that person, and then I click off.
Yeah. If
Um,
monads get you excited, this is for you.
right. Similarly, in that vein, we have this applicatives IRL by Jeremy. That's a little bit. That's probably in between the two things in terms of what's it called, like F sharp depth or functional depth. Um,
Yeah. Let's get into like the intermediate, more advanced stuff.
yeah, and this is just a post to his blog in general. Great blog, worth got a ton of stuff that's worth reading through, especially if you're interested in like performance. He just goes deep on a lot of topics.
Yeah.
I haven't seen this Ian Russell Essential Functional First F Sharp. I think this is a book released more recently that's gained like geared towards introduction.
Well, he had a first edition and he's currently working on a second edition right now.
Okay, cool. You got a typo here, Matthew Crew. Not a big deal.
Nice.
But your Fast F Sharp series again, linked in his Twitter if you want to go here. Go check out Matt's YouTube channel there. And then No Mem Alec by Jeremy. He hates allocating any memory in
Oh
the
yeah.
name of
And if
performance
he's gonna do it,
and whatnot.
I I need to do that like most interesting man meme. Is just like when I don't always allocate, but when I do, it's on the stack because he's I've seen some of the stuff he does. It's like, yeah, I'm just gonna stack Alec that. It's like, whoa, it's good
Yeah,
stuff.
he's great. And then there's some people to follow on Twitter. Cool. So great link, good collection of stuff, and I have a few things that I'll be checking out myself. All right, next. F sharp data literal providers. This looks like a shorter article we can go through. For anyone who doesn't know, a type provider is a way that you can generate types either at compilation time or during runtime based on some source. That source can be like a JSON document that you generate types that correspond with the data inside of it. It can be like a SQL database that you generate, table and column types that correspond to it and whatnot. So there's a bunch of different type providers out there in the F sharp world. I I haven't seen as much press around them in the past few years. Are they a
So
thing as much in .NET 6?
okay, so I'm gonna unpack that a little bit. So
Yeah,
what you said is absolutely correct. The intention behind that feature is that basically you have this injection point in the compiler to be able to say like, hey, I want you to run some code and generate types for me. And it was this idea of getting static typing the world is I think it's something that like Tomas Petracek said in a talk way back in the day. But the way it's done is like, hey, you basically have this injection point into the compiler. The intention was for it to generate types, but does it have to? No. And so this is one of the interesting things that I think is going on here, and I have not dug deep into it, where it's like what that code is doing is when you compile the code, like literals are something that kind of gets baked into the code, right? It's, and I'm not going to go into the details of what is actually happening there, but what it's doing is it's running that code, like the environment thing. It is actually going out and getting something and then injecting it into the generated code. So that's where the connection string is coming from. So normally you would actually have to have a string there, like
yeah,
the actual string. But because the type provider functionality allows you to run code during the compilation step, you're not able to like make that a variable because it's evaluating it at the compilation time. So that's why this is really interesting. And so what's great here is that like, hey, if I had secrets or something, or query strings or other things that I don't actually want to put into the code, but I don't want to make it, I don't want to make it static in the code, but I still need it. This is a way of like tricking it, or like it's utilizing the type provider functionality
yeah.
in an alternate way. And so that for me is like, oh, this opens up things that are very interesting.
Yeah, that's really neat. So I'm gonna I understand now that you spelled it out, so thank you. But so typically, like let's say I were to use a SQL command provider in which I'm
Yep.
I'm pointing a connection string to a database and username, password,
Yep.
whatever somewhere,
Yep.
and um, typically the compiler forces you, hey, you either have to have an exact string right here, or you
Yep.
have to have a string like above it somewhere with this type annotation
Yep.
of literal.
Yep.
And so you don't want a secret there, right? If you want to be able to ship your code,
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
So what this allows us to do is say is to basically say, hey, this is the literal, but not really. It's like a literal that's going to be
Yeah.
injected. That's cool.
Yes.
So you can do it via an environment or a text file somewhere, or you can execute some code to get a literal.
Mm-hmm.
That's neat. So they have conditions.
And the
So
yeah, and the case that they're showing here is kind of a classic conundrum that you ran into with type providers in F sharp, where like up above you had the connection, the SQL connection, and it needed a connection string, but you do, again, you don't want to put that in your code directly. And so that was always like this painful thing to deal with. And
yeah, you'd have to
now
like
this kind of provides
edit your code, push it, edit your
yeah.
connection string back, or
Oh
then
yeah.
forget and then have to update your creds
Yeah.
because you pushed
Yep.
it to prod or something.
Yeah, it's a pain. So this is a brilliant and clever way of doing something. I love this stuff because like, oh yeah, that's so obvious, but no one did it. And yeah, it's just like, that is rather clever. I am very impressed. I like this.
Yeah, that's great. And you can use conditionals. So, for example, if you want to use one connection string
Mhm.
locally and one in production or something like
Yep.
that, you can do it this way. Which is really cool because I know when I use like a what's it called, a connection like this, I usually just, for example, like a JSON body, if I want to
Yeah.
like use one JSON versus another, I mean
Yep.
that's something that might be relevant, and I can use the sample from the anyway, you get what I'm saying.
Mhm.
Anyways, you can do conditioning, and then what's going on here? Value as int and bool. Uh, oh, okay. So this is I can cast it to specific types. I didn't know you could do literal on an int. I thought that was just kind of huh. Like I thought that was kind of implied or something.
I think it's
Anyway,
on any primitive type.
yeah, I guess so. Anyway, great project. I'm trying to. I don't have any initial ideas of where I would use that, but I'll keep the tab open to think on. This is just my normal trick is I'll have like the F sharp weekly tab here, and then anything that's to the left of
Mhm.
it at the end, I check after like my initial session. But yeah, that's great. Really happy to see that. Cool. So this is Isaac Abraham of Compositional IT. He works on SafeStack stuff a lot, and he has a post here on iServer timing. So what is this? Is this like a draft specific thing? Let's see, server timing. It's on. I see a link is at w3.org, which means it's not a .NET specific thing. This is a WC3 draft, or W3 draft. Uh, but it's an API that defines itself as specification allows the server to communicate performance metrics about the request response cycle with user agent. Okay. So I guess I mean my first take here is that I make an API request from my browser
Mhm.
to some server,
Mhm.
and the server can respond with information around maybe how long it took in the database, how long it took in different parts of the request. Not specifically sure, but it looks like this is a way in ASP.NET Core where we can start to provide that timing to the client. Not
Yeah, I think
exactly
I think if
sure. Yeah, go for it.
yeah, I think if you're a web person, this is going to be really interesting to you. And I know that there's a lot of F sharpers out there who are doing the web stuff, and I think that that is where it'd be most valuable. I didn't know that there was like some standard around server metrics. That's interesting that W3C actually has like a standard around this.
Yeah, I had no idea. I'm curious in what cases I would want my client to have that information, or maybe it's like a type feedback kind of thing. But I'm trying to figure out like when would I want my client to have the server timing metrics. Um, Curious there, because otherwise I would normally just like log them on the back end and then look at the logs or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
collect it via Honeycomb or some other tool.
Mhm.
Um, Anyway, so it looks like here they're manually adding the metrics. I'm guessing the second parameter is timing, uh, like milliseconds. So this is like a Saturn thing. And then in the front end, oh, okay. So in Chrome, I'm guessing this is the Chrome DevTools. I can look.
Mhm.
Oh, look at oh, that's neat. I can see the server timing over here.
Mhm.
That's neat. So while I would normally reach to logs or something for this, this is probably a tighter feedback loop, and now I don't have to like hand roll my own thing.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's what he was mentioning at the beginning of the article is for like that tighter feedback loop in the dev environment.
cool. Yeah, I just didn't read it. I was gonna jump straight to code. Um, cool. But that's a neat project. I'm curious. I'll take
Well,
the library open here.
it could also be useful if you're in some kind of environment where you're like really sensitive. You can take actions now based on how long stuff is taking. So if you know, like, hey, such and such API has got a lot of latency right now, so maybe I'm going to do something different in terms of what I present to the user. Because before, um, yeah, I could think of like so. For example, if like streaming Netflix, and like some
Hmm.
APIs being slow, you can provide feedback to the user saying like, hey, quality is degraded because of X, Y, and Z. And you could be more informative than like um internet bad.
Yeah, that's neat. Anyway, cool. I'll take that link. I'm just of the NuGet package and check that out. Maybe I'll think of a use for that. All right, this is going to be a bigger post. So comparing a voxel game in F Sharp and Rust. So
Oh boy.
Yeah, he recently ported RoboCave from F Sharp to Rust as a way to learn and experiment with Rust. The game is a first-person shooter originally written for 70 FPS, which is maybe a game jam or something like that. Yeah, it's some kind of competition. And Proc Jam, another kind of competition using F Sharp custom engine based on Garnet and Veldred. Cool. So, bunch of game dev stuff that I do not know about. I'm curious to see. We have a little link here of the demo, so we might as well click here and see. Oh, okay. So we got FPS. I'm using normal controls here. Okay, feels like a Minecrafty FPS.
Oh, nice.
The I don't know why, but I really did go up
This
there.
was made in a game jam.
Yeah,
Good
I'm curious
gravy.
what context of a game jam. I would really like to make my mouse less sensitive, but maybe that's on me.
Get
Um,
good.
yeah, just get good. That's it. I'm not used to. I don't choose FPSs typically, but that's cool. I mean, that's great performance. I mean, my initial impression is that's amazing performance for like a for an in-browser game. Um, anyways,
Well,
so you
what's
can
also cool
yeah
is if as you go down, and I have not read through, I've skimmed this article, but like the fact that that terrain is like destructible and stuff, like that's kind of like what you expect, right? Out of like something that's a Minecraft derivative.
hmm
But the difficulty of developing engines where the terrain itself can change over time, because there's so many cheats and hacks in game development where like the map structure ahead of time, and so you pre-compute a lot of things like light maps and stuff. And once you say like no, the terrain could change, like oh, all those tricks and hacks that I say hack like all the techniques, that's a better way of saying it, all the techniques are no longer applicable because things can be changing dynamically. So
mm,
this is article is really interesting just from a game engine development performance. Like if you're kind of if you're in the performance realm, this article is going to be interesting. A just from like hey the application, because there's not tons of content of like actually building stuff. Um, Also the fact that it's comparing F sharp and Rust is really interesting because I've heard lots of things on Rust, and I think every other day I get someone's like, "You should try Rust." Like anytime I say like something about performance,
yeah
and the it's gonna we'll see how like Rust is really cool. It is also, from my perception, a massive intellectual jump from F sharp
hmm
in terms of difficulty. So
yeah. I just don't want to have to manage my memory. like like I know that they do it really nicely, and you know it's hard to fall into black holes and whatnot, but um, I like not having to worry about that too much. I know you're on the deep end of performance and like you want to like fine tune things like that, but
well,
generally
that's
I'm not
part of what.
there.
Yeah, well, it's part of what I like about F sharp is because like it has like the reasonable defaults. And yeah, you don't have to worry about it if you don't want to. But if you want to, you can just keep turning safeties off. Right. Whereas Rust kind of inverts that and said, like, you have to think about everything up front.
hmm
And it's also it's kind of like Haskell, where like Hello World isn't to like chapter 8 or something of a book, because you have to like understand monads and everything before you can even like print something to the screen. I think Rust is kind of similar in that, like, before you can even like parse text, you have to, you know, understand all these things about the borrow checker and whatnot. But I am not a Rustacean. I am not a Rust expert. So these are just opinions from someone who's like observing from a distance. So don't take this as truth.
Cool. So they go through a bunch of, I guess we won't go through all the little bits here, but they have ECS, which is a entity component system. So I guess it
Mhm.
manages the different objects in the world.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
classic way of laying out information about items in your world so that it's much higher performance. I'll shut up about this stuff. I'm like, if you saw my bookshelf, there's lots of stuff on game engine development. So like this has been my world for a while
oh, it
to take
has.
inspiration for performance. Yeah.
Oh, so specifically for performance learnings or
Yep.
huh.
Yeah, because like an entity component system is so oof, few things to unpack there. We don't have to do it, but it's just like in if you take like the fun, domain design made function, whatever that book by Scott, like that's fantastic. And I think if you're doing line of business apps or microservices or stuff like that, that is absolutely the book you should read and take as your inspiration. If you're doing high performance, you make some different decisions about how you lay out memory and how you model the world. And entity component system is just a kind of design philosophy about how do you compose your data such that it is easier to optimize and get more performance out of it.
Hmm. Sounds interesting. But yeah, that's neat. So they have the entity component system. They have a bunch of graphic stuff. Um, is Veldred a F sharp thing? What is Veldred? I guess this is a no. It's a .NET thing. Uh, Low level portable graphics library for .NET. I haven't seen this.
Me neither.
Um, that's a pretty image. I am curious how portable it is. I do some development for a little e-ink tablet. So this is e-ink friendly or no? um, Not a ton of. Actually, they got some good docs here. All right, curious there. I probably won't add that to my plate. But beneath the graphics library for all that, they have audio engine. Um, they have UI, of course. Uh, Came up with an approach of setting UI draw message from the game. They're similar
Ooh,
to Elm architecture.
Elm
That's neat.
architecture.
Yeah, I know. Like if as soon as I see those words, I'm a little bit
Yeah.
happier. Um, yeah. So Space Shot in the chat, hey Chris says, do they mean portability in terms of supporting Direct 3D and OpenGL plus the others it supports? Maybe. Um, yeah, I really don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I mean they support Direct 3D. Yeah, they might mean it in terms of these different things. So
Yeah,
you're probably right.
this is probably a layer on top of those, and it will target like depending on where it's running, it will target one of those backends for the code. So like you're probably not writing direct 3D stuff or
Yeah.
Vulkan or Metal code, thank goodness. So I mean that could I mean I'm not doing game development right now, but this is really interesting. And if I was, this is probably one of the first places I would come and just clone this repo and just kind of see how it's working.
Yeah. So there's UI elements there, voxels. I guess there's a bunch of stuff regarding voxel encoding, trunk management, blah blah blah.
I love the voxel aesthetic.
Yeah, no, me
It's
too. I mean, I spent a lot of my youth playing Minecraft. And then there's also just a number of other games, including anyway, there's some games that I loved in that space there. It's a nice aesthetic. Um, yeah, there's some networking, of course. Feedback loop for actual debugging, and then there's performance and there's a cargo flame graph later transy. Okay, so you used .NET or .trace and Visual Studio to find performance spots, and for Rust use those. Um, cool. I haven't looked at one of these kind of graphs or charts in a while. Uh, they Yeah, it looks interesting.
they could be
Um,
used they could be really useful in quickly identifying where something's gone horribly wrong. I think
yeah,
that's what they're most useful for. T- I've not found them helpful often, but I think that's just more a product of the code that I'm writing than like the technique itself. It's a great first pass at something saying like, "Whoa, I'm spending a huge amount of time in some particular method or not."
yeah,
They also demo really well at talks. People like them, so they're
yeah.
good for
That's
that.
true. Is it like a slideshow kind of effect?
Yeah.
Um, oh, look at this. F sharp is faster. You heard it here first.
Oh, shots fired.
With lower CPU, um, it says and 0.17 GC pauses. So I'm curious. So Rust, like, there's no garbage collection, right? Because you manage it all yourself. And so, right? Is that right? I see a
You could think
pause.
of it that way. Yeah.
Or you collect your own garbage. Or
I don't know enough about Rust to say it exactly. I think the way you're forced to deal with things means that there's no garbage collection necessary.
okay. But in .NET, we live in a garbage world.
Yeah.
We have the garbage collector on our side. I mean, sometimes we avoid that
It
to in the
yeah,
sake of
let's say
performance.
yeah, I would say like it is possible to write code that does not generate GC. And I think
Yeah,
people forget that like, oh no, you're doomed to garbage collection. Oh no. It's like or you could like not allocate and deallocate stuff all the time, you
yeah,
know. And that's a lot of what I do in the code that I'm using, where it's just like, yeah, at the beginning I'm like allocating a bunch of stuff, but then like I never do it again. So
mm,
there's no GC, and you can do that in F sharp and still be immutable and safe. It just takes a slightly different way of thinking about things. But yeah,
yeah.
I, I,
It's
the GC is if you're a developer and you're saying the GC is my problem, like no, you need to point that at yourself, friend.
nice. But in his F sharp code base, there is some level of
Yeah,
GC. I don't
yeah.
quite know what 0.17% of GC pauses means. Um, like,
Is that additive or is that inclusive in that 5 to 6%? Or
yeah, like or is he saying there's like 1/10 of a percent of stutter or something like that? Like I don't know what that. I don't know why it's bugging me, but
yeah,
I'm not sure what that means. But that's fine. Um, 35,000 lines of Rust. I'm totally quick reading this, but um, here I'll jump to the conclusion here, so we don't spend all the time on it. So, reach feature parity after a few months. They continue to build and refactor the Rust version. The versions are similar overall in structure and identical in many of the low-level algorithms. The Rust version has more gameplay features, about 25%, fewer lines of code. Yay! Oh no, boo. Probably due to simplifying the ECS code, removing GLTF, not port chunking persistence, or removing pooling. I know some of those words, not all of them. Rust version turned out to be surprisingly static, at least compared to prior code I've written that tend to have more abstractions or some other forms of event dispatch. This is probably due to slightly higher friction for abstractions, might tend to be minimalist. Again, so he wrote the F sharp version first and then rewrote it in Rust. So it's natural
mm,
there's going to be some level of some improvements there, right? As lessons are learned. Um, yep, naturally, F sharp versions are thicker in output, 16 meg versus 3 meg. Um, F sharp version has 14 separate files. This could probably be metafied into one, but not a big deal. Rust version only has single executable. At least I can't think of any reason that they couldn't do a single executable for F sharp. As far as I know, you can pack things in the exe pretty well these days. Um, let's see. Able to target WebAssembly with Rust. Uh, and if Veldred supported it, it could probably do the same there. Yeah, in my experience, and we were able to port a lot of stuff to WASM, a lot of F sharp
mm-hmm.
code to WASM. So, uh,
That's awesome.
yeah. Cool DIY indie engine. Great. All right. Great post here. Happy to read through it. Um, I does this have networky stuff? Oh, so I guess the what we're seeing here in the browser is the Rust WASM thing, but then the downloads below are the F sharp.
Mm,
That's my guess.
mm-hmm.
Cool. Um, cool. Great post. All right, I'll pause for a second there, and we can keep going.
Okay, we
Um,
take a quick break.
yeah. Take a quick
I'll be
break.
right back. Just give me a
Yep.
sec.
Sounds good. let's see here. All right, so we still got this reflection-free code gen, F# landscape, Phantomos. That might be a quick thing to jump back into. Something that's kind of light. Minimal API. In fact, I can just pull this locally. So open that up. And what else do I want to open up? Full stack WASM F# app. Cool. How you doing? I'm just downloading a few code repos that might be useful later.
Sweet.
So we got, actually I'll just do code, full stack there. Next, so I'll close these tabs in favor of those VS Code things. SIMD array, that's you. Fleece, I should just learn what Fleece is. So yeah, we did look at literal providers. That's. I think there were two tabs. I kept on saying there were two tabs, but finally I found the second one. And that is yeah, literal providers here. So I can close this guy. Fable. I don't know what is new with Fable. I'm not seeing a ton. So I might just kill this. I know actually one thing that is worth mentioning about Fable is that the new version of Fable is coming out. Or I'm not sure.
I saw Unit of Measure. I saw Unit of Measure. I'm excited.
Oh, you saw? Where'd you see it? Oh, here. Trait poll Unit of Measure. Nice. So that's exciting, but also exciting is the next version of F# coming out, and I think as far as I'm aware,
Fable or F#.
Sorry, a Fable.
Okay.
I don't mean to excite too much. But the what's it called? Fable traditionally was to compile F# down to JavaScript. People eventually started, so it does that by taking your F# source code, compiling it down to intermediate Fable AST, and then compiling that down to like Babel AST, and then JavaScript, blah blah blah. But then since then, people have taken on the Fable project. Yeah, they've gotten nuts, and now like, hey, what if we generate PHP? What if we generate Rust? Like they just like, what if they're asking too many questions. So I think
Dart,
this is like,
I think
it's yeah. I see Dart
and
now.
Rust.
And Rust, yeah. So I think that 4.0, in my ignorant understanding, is probably the branding of saying, hey, we're more than just JavaScript. It could be a lot more than branding, and that could be a totally wrong take. But if you're interested in that world, check that out. But for the sake of this, I'll probably close this for now. Once it gets a little bit closer, I think it'll be worth spending more time just on Snake Island or Fable. Maybe I'm not sure if they're rebranding.
Yeah, Alfonso has there's been a few tweets of his that are like, oh man, do I write this big post or do I do another feature? And so far feature keeps winning, I think. But yeah, he's kept mentioning I had this really big post I need to write. I'm like, write the post, dude.
Yeah,
because I think it's talking to this.
Yeah, I think it can be tough to release something like that. What might be useful is just get him in a room and just ask him a bunch of questions to let me write the post for you. Just word vomit, and we'll write down the words and figure it out. Because I'm sure it's all in his brain, but he just might not be in the mindset to extract it. So Alfonso, if you're watching this, or if you watch this in the video, feel free to ping and we'll extract it from your brain. All right, .NET MAUI. We'll take a peek at that. Yeah, this is a 30-minute video on WASM in .NET. I might have seen most of these pieces. Actually, I'll watch this separately. But again, I've talked about WASM enough for the day. But very cool.
Yeah, and for people who don't know, because this has been a multi-year thing, Steve Sanderson is the guy who started this. The first thing where he kind of blew up a little bit was he wrote some two-way data binding for JavaScripty thing. I don't remember what it was called, but it was back when we had like tons of, well, we still have tons of JavaScript frameworks coming out, but he wrote one of the really early ones people got really excited about because it had two-way data binding and stuff. But then later, what he did is he kind of asked a question like, well, what if we had .NET in WASM? Like, what if we could just take .NET and put it in the browser? And he found a project which was like a minimal .NET, like a super tiny .NET engine, and then did some crazy, like went mad scientist and got that running in WASM, and then started like doing C# in the browser, and people were just like, what? And like it was, I think it was for an NDC talk, maybe an NDC Oslo, and he was just doing it. It was like, I'm just doing crazy stuff. And there was no, and that was not a part of his job at all. But there is so much interest from the community saying, like, oh my geez, please, like, we want this. And that's when, okay, Microsoft, like, wow, there's like a lot of interest in this. Maybe we should actually do this. And so this has been this like multi-year ever an evolution of from that original talk
Yeah.
where people were just kind of like, oh my gosh, yes. So it's cool to see that like this is actually this from a crazy demo to product. It's been happening.
Yeah, I remember when that talk came out. I think it was NDC Oslo, and it was very exciting. People were like, "Well, what the hell is this? These guys just came out with like .NET Blazor out of a sudden." Like,
Yeah.
very cool. Anyway, so I'll be watching this video. I mean, it's probably redundant to all the not. I don't know. I'm curious what new content's there compared to all the other the press. Um, this is the project that I'm really excited about. .NET WASI SDK. This is compile all your .NET code in a single WASM file, rather than right now where you download
Dang.
all the DLLs. Um,
Dang.
and by the way, we could use this for Dark. It worked, but it doesn't work for AOT builds. So ahead of
Mm-hmm.
time compilation is just not supported right now, and that's something that we need for performance.
Yeah,
Um,
obviously.
but I am really curious. I don't have. I'm ignorant right now as to how to performance test WASM, especially like Blazor WASM, and
Yeah.
to find different metrics and to how do you link the original sources, and especially like how do I find the performance of the sources when I'm in release mode and AOT mode and all that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, Blazor WASM without AOT is not fast as far as I know. It was like okay fast without AOT for us, but AOT definitely helped a lot. That was my experience. The other thing that really helped a lot is just do not use Newtonsoft JSON for Blazor. It does not work well. Um,
Yeah.
it
And
was just damningly slow. Um,
yeah, one of the, so to clarify something for everyone, because maybe not everyone knows what AOT is, ahead of time compilation. So for normally the way a .NET app works is when you take your code, when you write your code in F# or C# or Visual Basic, and then you compile it, what's actually happening is it's turning into IL. And so that's the intermediate language that the CLR uses. And then when you actually run the application, the CLR then takes that IL, looks at the machine it's running on, and turns that IL into the machine code for the machine itself to execute. Now, that JITting, so the just in time compilation that's happening there, that can be time intensive depending on what you're doing. And if you have a web app, like you would really rather not do that. So ahead of time compilation is doing all the jitting ahead of, like, my understanding is that it's doing all the jitting ahead of time. And so it's like, hey, this code is actually for a particular target. So that's why there could be this really significant speed boost, is because you're removing that whole step of doing the JIT compilation. Is
yeah.
that your understanding as well?
Yeah, that's my understanding. And then as part of the AOT build, because it's doing the jitting ahead of time, you will see, or jitting ahead of time, not sure. The just in timing ahead of time doesn't quite make sense. But because you're doing that, it ends up with a more significant file size as well, is one little note to
Mm-hmm.
put on. For example, in Dark, it was just the place I'm working at, we do AOT compile, and all this is public code, so I'm not like leaking anything. But we do AOT builds for things, and we have this little WASM project here, and in the dub group, which is what you ship and what is downloaded by the client here, includes a bunch of DLLs and whatnot. One little note here is that the debug build is like 57 meg, and the release AOT build is like 107 meg. Of course, there's gzipping and everything, which makes sure the download um, doesn't require that much, but that's what the AOT is for, and that's just one impact to kind of keep in mind. Cool. Anyways, that's the project I'm looking on. I'm just hoping that it gets AOT at some point, but that's that. Cool. So now we're down to just these many tabs, which isn't bad. We got like 40 minutes left here. And I thought a good next kind of light post to go over would be this one on Phantomos. I don't think this should take too long, and it should be relatively interesting. So again, so Phantomos is a tool that is used to format your F# code. So you don't have to fight with your coworkers about what the right way to format something is. You have a text file that encodes all the rules, and that's it, which is great.
So I will, and to piggyback on that a little bit. So I've used those in JavaScript and TypeScript environments before, and often with those, they are very flexible. The auto formatter is like, hey, this is our style. This is our style. Phantomos, less so. It is more like this is the way. This is the way, period. And that has led to discussions online. Not everyone is in line with that. So what I would say, like, if you're like, oh, it doesn't quite do what I want, I'm going to go create like a feature request or something, like, don't be surprised if it's like, no, that's not the official way. As someone who's now written more code, like, formatting matters less to me the older I get. It's kind of like, whatever, it's just code. And one of the nice things about this, like, I can write it in the style that I write it, but then when I go to like check in, you can make this part of like a CI/CD process where it's like, I can write in whatever style I want, but then once I go to like create the pull request or something, this step could run and like format it the way that we've all agreed to. So it's an opinionated framework, opinionated library. So be aware of that.
Yeah. I'm curious if there's intention of them diverting from this the way. For what it's worth, Phantomos does have some level of control, I think. Like, I know if you go to the demo here, so this is the, if I paste some code, x equals 1, whatever. I know this isn't, let me do this. 1, 2, here, I'm just going to do it this way. It's just going to be a bunch of 2s. So if I go to this and then I format it, it'll output some code on the right here. I guess the first request might take longer. I'm not used to seeing that. So you'll see this is like the format it chooses. As far as I know, there's also some settings over here where you can flip some flags. So maybe over time there'll be more and more flags to flip. Like, I know one thing that's been annoying with Phantomos is that the bindings for React for like properties and whatnot, for attributes and properties. Let me back up. When you're writing Fable code that involves an HTML DSL, and you have to, within each node, supply both the attributes and the properties, the attributes and the children. A lot of the time, there's no attributes, right? I just want it on the same line, and all these like finicky things where it formats poorly. So anyway, I hope that long term there's more options there. But we're going off course. We have this little post on Phantomos to read through. Before I do that, I see a question in chat. Speaking of Fable, how do you get started today? I don't know. I'd go to the homepage of Fable. There's probably a template that I would use.
Yeah, I was about to respond, but we'll just do it in words. They have two different templates that I'm aware of. One is like the batteries included one, which is like all like a bunch of reasonable defaults for everything you might want in. And then there's like a stripped down version where you're going to have to like pick and choose all the like more of the pieces that you want. I have found just using that default one is great. I've not run into any situations where like it didn't meet my needs. I'm also not an advanced web dev, so your mileage may vary, but that's where I would start. There's some really good documentation, and if you ever have questions, the F Sharp Slack is pretty responsive. There is, I don't know if there's a Fable channel, but I think there's a web one in the F Sharp Slack. So,
Yeah.
oh yeah, Jimmy.
I, yeah, I was seeing if Mini Scaffold had a Fable thing because Mini Scaffold, if you don't know, is like I don't know my favorite way that if I just want to create a new F Sharp project, I'll just go there because it comes
Mhm.
with a bunch of stuff baked in. I was seeing if there was a Fable template, but there's not. If there can be, Jimmy, go for it, please, because it's a great template engine to that we could add Fable into.
Yeah, the person I would ask would be like Isaac Abram,
Yeah,
uh, because I mean his whole company is like they just do Fable in production for the most part. I mean
yeah,
they do other stuff too, but that's the first person I would reach out to.
sure. But yeah, I mean, find a template and play around is probably a good thing. Oh, the other way, actually, I would get started with Fable. Um,
Oh, there is I think a to do app, like a Fable to do. And so if you want to see like all the features kind of doing their dance, that's
yeah,
something you could clone and run locally.
yeah. This is how I would start with Fable. Is I would go to
Mhm.
Fable.io REPL and just look at the
Oh,
samples.
oh,
There's like a
this is
spreadsheet
cool.
sample where it has like all your F sharp code here, and look at this. I got a spreadsheet within my browser. It might be. I see a deprecation notice that might be broken right now, but anyway, check out these samples. This is great, and you can see the JavaScript that it compiles down to.
Mhm.
Um,
The
cool.
one thing I would be aware of, like diving into it, is that there are several different uh, styles of composing your views because like there's Feliz Bulma and there's that's the thing to be aware of because if you just look at examples, be aware of like what um, view library they are using.
Yeah, View Engine or whatever.
View engine. Yeah, I don't know the right terms because Zaid is like crazy productive and just pumping stuff out. And pretty much anything he's doing, I have found really easy to use.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
be aware of the view engine that you're using.
yeah. I use his Bulma bindings,
Yeah,
which are great. Bulma's a CSS framework that's like thin and easy to get used to, and looks pretty. Like has
yeah,
good
pretty by
defaults and whatnot.
default.
Yeah. Um, unlike Bootstrap. So here, so World Domination Part 1. So this is a V4 release of Phantomas. Um, I'm curious all what changes here. So there's huge refactoring efforts and it's twice as fast. So before
Sweet.
on Ubuntu, I'm just gonna look at means here. Or maybe I'll look at like 90. I was gonna look at like 95%, but it's not here. So we have formatting some code. I'm not sure exactly what's being formatted here. Um, Took 2.4 seconds with the new version, 715 milliseconds. So that's great.
Allocated 2 gigs of memory. I'm looking at
Oh
the far
boy,
right.
that's amazing. And now only 200 megs, which still feels like a lot. Um,
Wow, I'm way better though. That order of magnitude. Whew.
yeah, 2 gigs.
Yay.
Damn. Um, cool. So wait a minute. Is this okay? Twice as fast. Oh, okay. So it is V4 right now. It's becoming V5. I misspoke earlier. Um, so last October, he spoke at F Sharp Exchange. He announced how the syntax tree. Let's see. Okay, cool. So I guess in order to make Phantomos better, he needed um, some changes to happen within .NET F Sharp. So I'm curious to hear about that, or if my interpretation is true there. Um, yeah, there's trivia involved. All right, I'm a little bit glossing over. Let's see. Crucial part of the talk was improving a syntax tree at .NET F Sharp was the key to everything. In short, a better syntax tree leads to fewer shenanigans in the Phantomas codebase. A significant part of improving the syntax tree was introduction to Trivia. Trivia is 2 meetings, and Phantomas uses a denotator for additional information that was present in the source code. For example, comments and new lines. So if you're
Mm,
not familiar, um, any code in F sharp is going to be compiled to an abstract syntax tree, which is like a tree format of your code. So um, it's funny. I was working with an AST yesterday. This is what an AST can look like. This is Dark's AST. We have a let binding. You say this let with ID of this and name of this is bound to this value within this expression. So imagine your F sharp
mhm,
code in the
mhm,
same kind of way.
mhm,
There's like this
mhm.
tree of code. Um, uh, anyway, so as part of that initial tree, there are trivia, which is like new lines and stuff that doesn't necessarily affect your code as it should be compiled. You're executing code.
Yeah.
And so in the F-sharp compiler, the same term trivia is used for additional information about the syntax that the compiler doesn't need to compile to binary. For the example, the range of a let keyword in a binding. I'm not sure what he means by the range of. Maybe it means like the scope of or something. Um, anyway, not super important. Having additional trivia in the syntax is immensely valuable to Phantomas. Um, so I'm assuming that Phantomas is using a project called FCS or F Sharp Compiler Service, which is
Mm.
an exposure of you have some F Sharp code, um, and you can get exposed to it. Uh, sorry, you basically have an opportunity to read the syntax tree, the F Sharp syntax tree in F Sharp. I have a usage of it also in the Dark code base here. What's it called? It's called F Sharp to Dark or something. F Sharp to expression. Maybe there's the other thing. F Sharp to expression. Yeah, so here we use the F Sharp compiler service and we take some input file, some F Sharp test file, and we pattern match on a bunch of stuff. So we're using it for some obscure testing thing, but the point is that F Sharp compiler service exposes all the different types and whatnot to you that you can consume and match on. And as part of this, there have been enhancements, I guess, for FCS's sake or for Phantom's sake, to involve more information, to involve trivia when you're
Mhm.
consuming this. So you don't just have the the code itself and the representation of the code. You might have other information that's useful to you, especially useful to something like Phantomas. So I'm curious what kinds of trivia they cared about.
Yeah, and the reason that matters to people for who are listening is like if you're just if your compiler is just trying to turn your source code into something the machine can execute, it's not going to care about things like comments. It's not going to care about. There's a lot of things it does not care about, and so it just starts stripping that out because it's unnecessary. But if you're writing something that is a formatter, you do care about that because your target is actually back to the language itself. And so all these enhancements are things like actually like we do care about all those things now. It's not necessary to run the code, but it's necessary to clean the code up. So it makes sense that you would need to add a lot to the AST to be able to kind of reproduce what it is that you want at the end.
Yeah. So one of the pieces to getting this amazing performance boost and much lower allocation is requesting and I guess getting more more of that kind of trivia information in there. I'm curious how they got by without such trivia,
Yeah,
or maybe
that's
they didn't,
impressive.
or something like that. Or maybe it was kind of there but not really. No permalink. Oh no. So, anyways, that's like the first piece that I guess was needed. Next piece is around keywords. Having more information about keywords allows us to better release what the user originally wrote. If we look at the syntax tree for blah blah blah, we get something along the lines of this. So, we have a type definition. Um, I'm gonna look for the word my type somewhere. Yeah, my type here. So we have this my type thing, and within that we have, oh boy, two of these things of abstract slots. So this is an abstract slot, I guess. Um, there's a name of one here. There's a name of two here, and within this, we get different information for abstract versus abstract member. Um, so we have member here in both. I'm trying to see what the difference is here. Whenever I come across something like this, where I'm like, oh, what's the difference in these two text blocks? I'm just
Mm,
going to throw out. I use this amazing tool called Beyond Compare. Um, I
mm.
paste in something on one side. I have these backwards, but whatever. I paste in something the other side, and all of a sudden I can see the exact differences. I'm sure there's a bunch of diffing tools that maybe even be better than this for that task, but this is the tool I use. It's called Beyond Compare. They
I am
have
checking
like,
it out right now.
yeah, they have a license that's like Sublime Text, where it's like bug you until you pay us, where
Oh,
it's like semi-free. But
yeah.
anyway, I have happily paid for it finally. But anyway, so what's the difference here? So I'm seeing that the member range here is supplied for two when we have the member keyword, um, but it's not supplied for when we don't have the member keywords. That's my main takeaway there. Um, and then there's also this TMPFX. I'm not sure what this is or whether that's important. But anyway, that seems like the major difference there is that the member range is different. So we can see that the trivia of SYN member flags, what exact keywords used for one and two, because the new information we can restore exactly what was written. Cool. So more information uh, in this trivia, which is great. All right, so that having more trivia there is another thing that helped. So for the identifier, consider this. So we have a function here that takes into integers and adds them together and also adds one. The
Never do this,
compile,
by the way.
why not?
Never override plus. That's what I'm joking about.
Yeah, 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 because it'll come up.
Oh my gosh. Yikes.
The compiled function name for the F# compiler will use the type tree op addition. We can determine this from tracking it back to the plus operator. However, there's no mentioning of the parentheses. Okay, luckily the AST looks like this. Uh, okay, so we have an op addition, some original notation with paren. Okay, so I think they're noting that they're taking advantage of the fact that this has paren here now. Maybe it did before, but um,
Oh,
the
interesting.
the AST explicitly says, "Hey, there were some parens around this," so
Oh my gosh. Yes, please.
that's
That
cool.
would drive me nuts.
Because otherwise, you format it and maybe the output would
You'd
just
strip
have the
it.
plus. Yeah, cool. Um, so I'm assuming that this is something that is new. Um, oh, so before, yeah, so it is new, and before this was available to them in the AST or in the compiler service, they needed to check every identifier to see, hey, is this an operator? Like, do I need to add these parens or not? And that can get pretty annoying. So that's great that it's available. Um, so another thing, talking about trivia, not everything was present in the syntax tree. Originally, we processed the tokens of each file. Inside these tokens were additional clues, as wrote. Um, I I I want to read the rest of this, but I'm also looking at the time right now, uh, and I think I'm going to skip this little section here. I'm pretty happy with the article that more information has been available to us in FCS, and that's helped Phantomas a lot, and allowed them to kind of increase their their performance and also time for the next version. While they're doing this, I guess they're rebranding. Now they're just going under Phantomas rather than Phantomas Tool. Cool. And the F# code base itself is being um, it's using Phantomos. So cool. Congrats on the new release. Happy to start using it once soon. We might even just use the beta version because that looks great. We use it within Dark to format all this stuff.
Mhm.
Um, cool. So that's a great post here. So I am going to cap it in like 15 minutes. So the question now is like, how do you want to spend the next 15 minutes? I feel like I've been talking about a lot of web stuff. What might be good is talk about SIMD array, because I'm sure you want to talk about that. And I want to hear about it. But I think this is great. Maybe I'll start with this next time. Maybe I'll do this next week and start with this F sharp landscape thing because I want to read this post. So I'll go through that. Um, are there any other things besides SIMD array that you want to talk about?
No, not really. I
Yeah.
mean, and we don't have to talk about SIMD array if you think people get more value out of the other thing. So,
No, I'm curious. I've heard different things about it, or I've seen it around, so I'm curious to hear more about it. I just closed the
Mhm.
.NET MAUI thing. I don't really care about it. Um, I don't know what Fleece is, so I'll just take like 10 seconds to learn what Fleece is. Oh, I think this is a JSON serializer.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So Fleece is one of the JSON serializers. I always forget which ones are available to us. It's funny. I might have to look at this today because
Mhm.
we're facing a serialization problem that I won't get into.
Oh,
Um, I doubt I'll have to get into it, but anyway, I'll keep that tab open for myself. It got a new release, which is great. Fable Lit, yeah, this is just another tool to write. Um,
so
yeah,
lit is a Google thing for light web components. And so Fable Lit is a wrapper around that.
okay, thank you. I still don't have great familiarity with like the browser level web components. Like I still hear web components and I think of like React components or Angular components or whatnot.
Yeah.
So, um, anyway, so my
There's
ignorance is there a little bit.
people are still trying to solve the web problem. Just like, we're going to do it right this time, y'all. It's
Yeah,
like, sure, 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 sure.
yeah. Cool. So that's neat. I probably won't look at that anytime soon, but that's great to hear that it's keep on going. So I'm just kind of closing some tabs until we get pared down on the last few here. F sharp data adaptive. Uh,
So this is a cool idea. So it's like, I believe it's getting data that is like stream, like not necessarily stream, but like loading over time. So like a, yeah. Oh, okay. Never mind. I take it back. I only read like a really quick thing, but this is something a little different. This is actually interesting.
what is
So
this?
data that's changing, but still in a functional style.
Like when I hear that, I think of what are the inverse of link where we have the events. Oh man, I'm thinking of like old .NET stuff.
Observables.
Yeah, observables. Like that's where my brain is going, but that could totally be wrong.
So there's an amazing talk that was given a while back where they were, I think they were using F sharp for like a graphics thing, and they were using I think a library like this. I need to dive into this more, but it's the idea of like, hey, we have data that's like changing over time, but only like we're only changing small components of it instead of like rewriting the entire like map, for example. We're just doing like small diff updates to it. And so it's the idea of being able to kind of like stream changes. I need to dig into this more, but if
Yeah,
you're wanting to have changeable data, but still write it in a functional way, this is for you.
that sounds interesting. Yeah, I don't think I have the brain power to really learn more about it right now.
Yeah.
But that sounds great. So this is just the link for F Sharp Adaptive. In fact, I'll keep this link open instead of this one. Um, incremental functional computations of connected imperative sources. All right, yeah, my brain's not there right now. So what else here? So we're down to the last few things. So yeah, this is one that I want to spend proper time on. In fact, maybe I was talking to him recently. Maybe I could invite him on next time and go
Mhm.
through this together. Um, it looks great. So we have reflection free code gen. Um, Again, yeah. So how about this? My brain's not in the space where I can kind of grok these things. So I'm gonna let you explain SIMD array.
Sweet.
So what is
So
this?
SIMD array, why are they? Are you ready for me to start ripping?
Yeah, yeah. What's SIMD?
Cool. So SIMD. So for those of you who don't know, SIMD is an acronym that stands for single instruction multiple data. And why does that matter? Well, because every modern CPU has SIMD instructions at this point, and I won't go into the full history of them, but one of the things that they found out back in the day is that, like, hey, there's a lot of the time where we have to do the same thing to a lot of different pieces of data. And so rather than trying to, well, so they said, like, hey, let's create some instructions so I can take a chunk of values and apply the same operation to all of them. That's where single instruction being applied to multiple pieces of data, SIMD. The and if you look at x86 CPU, like, and every CPU today has something like this. So x86 has like SSE, AVX. I'm not familiar with like what the ARM chips and RISC chips have, but they all have some idea around this. But for SIMD to really work really well, you want your data to be contiguous because you're typically like loading it in these blocks, operating on it, and then writing back. So arrays, right? So it's really intended to be used with arrays of data. So that's why having something like SIMD array is just like, hey, I want to be able to apply these functions to arrays of data. Now, right now, the F# library is not SIMD enhanced. And what do I mean by that? A lot of language, there's a lot of compilers, more specifically like in the C land, they will see that you're doing something like that and they will SIMDify some of your code for you. F# doesn't. So this library, what it does, like, hey, let's take some of these common operations and add functions for using SIMD instructions on arrays. And this is really useful if you're needing to do lots of like bulk operations. Like, hey, I'm doing the same thing to this entire array. If you're going in, like looking up a single element and doing something to it, that's not what SIMD is for. If you're needing to, like, hey, I need a map, like if you're doing array.map, you're going to go through and you're going to apply something to every single element and produce a new array. That is a natural place to use something with SIMD instructions, because what it will do is like, hey, I will do it in larger chunks. And so this is a way to really speed up bulk processing. So if you're someone who's writing code where you have arrays and you're needing to do mass transformations on those arrays, this is a library for you. And I looked through some of the source code underneath, and it looks like what it's using is the system.numerics.vector type for doing it. So if you were someone in the C# land, you would be using the vector type, which does some of this stuff for you automatically. And the vector type is kind of hiding the machine specific instructions that are being done underneath the hood. And so this, you can almost think of as, from my understanding, is basically, hey, we're writing an abstraction on top of the system.numerics.vector type for F# arrays, and we're getting the speed up of the fact that vector can use SIMD instructions under the hood. So that is what's going on. So how do you know if this is of interest to you? You need to do bulk transformations on arrays or bulk
How bulk?
filtering or
Like how bulk is it
um
worth it?
I would, so if it's anything less than like 20 elements, and this is usually with primitives, right? So you're dealing with ints, bools, int64, floats, that type of thing. If it, again, your mileage may vary, but if you're below 20 elements, it's probably not going to be useful for you. once you get larger than that, you start seeing some serious speed advantages. And it's because of the way SIMD works and the size of the registers. And I don't want to like, I don't want to like
Get in the weeds,
completely
yeah.
blow you away. Well, because like you're also stomping into like one of my favorite places on earth. And I recognize like not everyone likes this stuff, but it just has to do with like the size of chunks of data that it likes to work with. Right. So it really likes 4 or 8 elements at a time. And that will depend on the size of your data. Cause like an N32 is smaller than an N64. So that's how you know it's something of interest. What's nice about this is that it's a pretty clean API swap. So you could easily like write up a benchmark for like whatever it is that your code is, and then write another version where you just kind of like, instead of array.map, like what we're seeing on here, like on the middle of the screen, I believe is like array.simd.map. So you can like try them both out and see if it's much of a speed enhancement. And because of the API parity, it's not going to be that big of a
You don't have to, it's not a big
large of an
investment.
effort.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a big investment. It's not like you're completely. It's not like you're changing frameworks or anything. It's
Yeah,
just
just
you're
download
trying
Nuga
another
package,
library.
try it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'll probably like check this out at some point. I for what I'm doing, it's not useful yet, but that's just because of my particular use cases. But if I was needing to do bulk transformations of data, this is definitely something I would check out.
Cool.
Oh man, Fuel has. Oh, I'm gonna see what he's been saying over
Yeah,
here.
you got a backlog of performance
Yeah,
messages.
yeah, yeah. Sure. Yeah, I mean, I generally agree with everything in there. I think it's a case of like the lift is so small, and go ahead and try it. And they have some nice metrics in here, so you can see like what the performance difference is. So like you're saying here, and there's a little bit of lag on the, like what I'm saying, but you see like for 100 elements, there's about a 50% improvement, and then that goes up as the number of elements increases. So that's why I said like 20 elements. Like you need to get above that for it to start to really matter. And I'm not going to the weeds of why, but that when I say bulk, I mean, you know, 100 or more elements.
Cool. That all sounds great. I'm curious. Are there languages where this kind of thing is like baked in? Is that a thing that makes sense?
Ooh, this is one of the Fuel Snabel mentioned, and I have no idea if I pronounced that correctly. Like there are some like C++. Yeah. Okay. So there you are. There are like languages where it is kind of baked in. And what he's mentioning, there are some graphics languages, high level shader language.
Hmm.
And I don't know what GLSL is, but I'm guessing it's another shader language. So it is kind of just baked into what they do because it's like, you're operating on arrays.
Yeah.
Um, so this is actually more of a thing in like array oriented languages, which I am a big fan of. And everyone just kind of like says, Matthew, you're weird whenever I mention it. But this is it's for this reason. Like if when array is your fundamental intrinsic, using SIMD everywhere is really simple. Simpler. I'll say simpler.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that sounds great. I appreciate that context. I understood most of that, I think.
Cool.
Which is enough for me. Cool. I think is this I'm gonna make a pull request. So I don't know what SIMD is. I think it'd be important to like include something here of what the hell is SIMD within the README. Is this like the way to type it out?
Yeah, that
Or
is
would
what
you
the
put a
acronym
hyphen or
stands
something
for.
somewhere?
No. That's
Okay,
that's
cool.
correct.
Um,
I
all
usually
right,
put a comma between instruction and multiple, but
perfect. Uh,
I'm married to an English teacher, so
Good. I'm gonna put that PR up then. It's a one liner PR that will help the next someone like me. Um, but anyway, so we're coming up on 1:30, which is 2 hours after we started. I'm gonna cap it here. There are a few things we couldn't get to. One of the things I want to get to is this exploring the F sharp front end
yes.
landscape. It's a big post. I should probably read it ahead of time and kind of digest it and then uh, come back with something to talk about here. And then there are these two F sharp language suggestions and PRs.
Hmm.
One for
Hmm.
reflection free code gen, which my brain does not have the energy for right now. And similarly, computation expressions and function declaration,
Hmm.
which is something
Hmm.
that is interesting to me. Um, but again, not the brain power here and not the time. But this has been great. This has been a little review of F Sharp Weekly. This is week 22 of 2022. Um, I think I'll probably try to do this next week as well. If you're interested, welcome to join.
Sir,
Otherwise, cool. But yeah, anyone in the audience or in YouTube, thank you for watching. Appreciate it. If you have feedback, happy to do it. I mean, in terms of things that I want to do differently next time, I know kill more of the links ahead of time. If I'm like on the fence about opening a link, don't open it. Like the Maui stuff, you know, if I'm not like really deeply interested in it, why not just kill it?
yeah,
Um,
Microsoft is doing enough to push Maui. We don't need to do it for them.
yeah, that's fair. Which has been the case for all their other UI things. And the other thing is like, yeah, you did a good job of researching things ahead of time. I'll probably spend a little bit more time prepping. I don't know. I like kind of like the organic feel too. Um, but anyway, really appreciate you joining. If you want to check out Matt, check out his Twitter, MC Cruz. He's MC Cruz, I think everywhere. You go to
Yep.
MatthewCruz.com. Check out his Fast F Sharp um, YouTube videos. They're great. I'm subscribed to my other thing. Okay, this is my work account. Don't look at the subscribe button not clicked. Uh,
I don't. It's fine.
I'm,
Whatever.
I'm
It's a
subscribed.
very niche
I'm
audience.
I'm
It's a niche
subscribed
within a
in I'm
niche.
subscribed in Firefox. I do Chrome for work
Oh,
stuff and Firefox
yeah.
for life stuff.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, great videos. I'm working my way through slowly now. Um, anyway, I'm Stashu. I'm here on Stashu.net everywhere. This has been great. I'll be back next week, hopefully with Matt as well.
All right.
Anyway, thank you for watching. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.